Yeah.
So what's the number one question you get when people kind of pick your brain about growing up as a child in a household with someone just so incredibly creative and talented? What's the number one thing they ask?
Well, I think, the inclination is to think that the person that you see on stage is, in a lot of ways, with Mom, for instance, that was who she was, but she was she was a mother, I mean, when she stepped off that stage, she took her mothering very seriously. And it's well documented, presented her with many challenges through the years because I was a little bit crazy when I was younger. So, she had and juggling her career and, being on the road constantly, it took a different kind of mothering, really. And, and Jerry filled that void too when she was on the road. He really stepped in and guided me and made sure that I was taken care of. But getting back to your question, I think people just say, well, it must have just been, you just must have been laughing the whole time when living in a house with her. But no, I mean, we were faced with the same challenges that all families are, and there were ups and downs. We were just lucky that there were a heck of a lot more ups than bad times, and especially towards the end with Mom. I mean, she and I got some really, really quality time together and talked about stuff maybe that, we just never got around to talking about, and probably wouldn't have had she not been sick. But it was really kind of the best time between her and me that, we really became very strong and tight towards the end. And we always were close. And she was my biggest supporter, always. And even when I was acting a fool as a child, it was fine for her to discipline me, but don't you say something about Beaver, because she's going to always defend me. And I knew that she had my back all the way till the end. And that's a pretty cool thing that I don't think everybody has that.
Yeah, that's very true. That's so funny you say that because, in our household, we get that all the time. And my children go, oh yeah, it's hilarious all the time. Your mom's just a joke, but you got to put on that mama hat and, you got to do what mamas do. And, you got to make that transition. And what you see is partially, that's who you are, but that's another side of you. And I totally get that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and it's hard to be a child of someone who's just all the time, oh, you're Jeannie's son or you're, Jerry's stepson and all of that. But I think, as you've said, you see a whole different element of just closeness. And I think it just takes maturity a lot of times when you can kind of see the gift that you can give each other and loving each other and having those special times. And right before Jeannie passed away, which we had absolutely no idea it was going to happen, 6 weeks after Jerry, because I saw you at the service, but then I think I saw you at National Speakers when Jeannie actually gave her very last speech.
That's right.
And you in the audience, and she referred to you so many times. And, that whole last performance thing has just been iconic. But I remember being at y'all's home in Burlington. And I remember I had such a sweet moment with Jeannie because I know she's so talented. And what do you do when your spouse, I have no idea. I've known loss, just my family and my mother and my sister and all that. But I remember grabbing her hand and I said, Jeannie, you just travel and love on your people and do what you do best and just give it your best. And I just remember that was such a connection that I loved. It was so special to me because I just felt like we just had a real special time of just, I loved her. I thought she was one of those incredibly talented, but beyond that, disciplined person with the way she could create material. And I've been listening to her over and over, traveling and pairing the YouTube with my car. And I would just stop and say, how did she do that? How in
Yeah.
the world? But it was like every single phrase and word was intentional.
Yeah.
And she paused, the half laugh, the full laugh. Am I
Hmm.
saying, am I reading that right? Because it seemed like it was, I always say Jeannie was scripted, but so natural when it was delivered, it came across as completely not scripted.
No, you're exactly right. And at her funeral, I touched on that because, um, yes, she had an incredible amount of natural ability and in the area of humor, but I know that she was a grinder, and I know how much work went into working on that timing to where when she gets on stage and she nails it, it seems effortless, but there was a lot of effort that went into it, because I can't tell you, I mean, she would get up. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that growing up that I'd hear her walking around in the kitchen at 4 a.m. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and she's rehearsing and rehearsing, and really a lot of it was timing, because as you know, that's critical in what you guys do. And she made it look effortless, but I wanted people to know that it wasn't. She just didn't roll out of bed and come up with that stuff and walk out on stage. I mean, it takes an incredible amount of practice and work, and as you said earlier, discipline to hone your craft and become what you guys are ultimately. And when you make it look effortless, that's when you've gotten there, right? It's the people don't need to necessarily know about the work. I just wanted to make sure they did, because I think, I have heard people say, well, that's an easy job. I mean, she's just going up there and walking out on stage, making people laugh and leaving and getting a check. Well, no, a lot goes into it, because there's plenty of people that could do that, what they're talking about, but they're not going to do it long, because they're not going to have success because they don't put in the work. So,
Yeah.
So she was a real grinder. She really was. Jerry was too. They would they wanted to make sure whatever they were going to do, they were going to do it right. And I think that they were successful at that.